Honestly, I freaking love this album. I absolutely love it. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I am Molly, and in this video I'm going to be ranking all 8 studio albums from the band Slipknot. Now, over the course of the past year or so, I have gotten into Slipknot's albums here on my channel, and I've been introduced to their music, and I've fallen in love. I think they're an amazing band, so I figured I would take it upon myself to rank all of their albums now that I've heard them all, and just kind of see which ones have ended up being my favorites, which ones have fallen a bit for me in the ranks. Obviously, this ranking is completely subjective. It's just based on my own personal taste. But without further ado, let's dive on into my ranking of all of Slipknot's studio albums. Alright, so really quickly, just to explain my ranking system here, A+ are going to be for the albums that I just think are absolutely perfect. I wouldn't change a thing about them. A is going to be for the Slipknot albums that are basically perfect. There's maybe like 1 or 2 little nitpicky things about them I don't love, but overall fantastic. B are for the Slipknot albums that I think are kind of just right in the middle, like really good. They don't necessarily shine and rise to the top, but they're by no means bad. C are going to be for the Slipknot albums that kind of fade into the background, that aren't really that memorable. And then D are going to be for the ones that just fall to the bottom for me personally. So starting off with the first album in Slipknot's discography, we have Mate, Feed, Kill, Repeat that they put out in 1996. Now, I don't know if this is technically their first studio album. I think the band kind of considers it as more of a demo, but Wikipedia lists it as their debut studio album, so I figured I would include it on this ranking. Now, this album is really unique in their discography because it doesn't feature Corey Taylor on vocals. They recorded it before he joined the band, and it has Anders Kulsefny instead, which I actually really like his voice. I think it kind of suits the style really well, and it's kind of similar to Corey Taylor's at times. Mate, Feed, Kill, Repeat as an album overall, though, is a little bit disjointed for me. It's kind of all over the place with like its genre and kind of what they were trying to do with it, with its sound. I don't know, it just kind of has like a thrown together style to it, which makes sense if they were going for like more of a demo style with this recording. And I don't find myself returning to this album. It has a lot of early versions of tracks that they put on some of their later albums, and I tend to just go back and listen to the later versions of those songs. So with that being said, Mate, Feed, Kill, Repeat, for me, I think I'm going to put in D. It's just not a Slipknot album I find myself going back to. It's fun to check out. Like, if you're a fan of Slipknot, definitely give it a listen. It's really cool to hear like the earlier versions of some of the tracks that appear in their later stuff, but it definitely doesn't really stand out, and it's not my favorite in their discography. So up next in their discography is their 1999 self-titled album, Slipknot. I cannot begin to describe how much I love this album. It's just amazing. It's such a cool fusion of styles. It's fun and playful, but it's so dark and morbid at the same time. They just blend all of that so amazingly well on this thing. The percussion for sure is just a massive standout on this album, and Corey Taylor has joined the band at this point, and his vocals just bring so much energy and raw emotion to them. And with all of the DJ effects and sampling that they do too on this record, it's just such an amazing fusion of sounds that I never get tired of. Every time I turn this album on, I find something new about it that I pick up on that I just absolutely love. Eyeless is for sure one of my favorites, just with so much punchiness and energy to it. The percussion on Purity also is absolutely fantastic. And this album has an amazing haunted quality to it as well, kind of a creepiness. The tracks, Prosthetics, and Scissors are great examples of that. But I could go on and on for hours about Slipknot's self-titled album. This thing is phenomenal. It never gets old. I absolutely love listening to every track off of it, and it is no question in A+ for me. Up next is Iowa. Slipknot released this album in 2001, and it's really such growth for the band in just 2 years' time since they're self-titled, because they somehow take that dark playfulness of their self-titled and they developed it into this really intense, deeply dark album. The core elements of what I love about their self-titled are still there in Iowa, but they just make it even more mature sounding in a way. There's less of like that playful kind of almost cheeky side to their sound, and they just really hone in on that darkness that I was talking about and the intensity of their sound. And Corey's vocals, dare I say, are like maybe even better on Iowa than they are on their self-titled. He just brings this amazing aggression to his vocals. There's so much pain that he delivers with his emotional vulnerability as well on this thing. The way this record starts with People Equal Shit, it's just like this massive surge of energy to get the album going right at at the beginning. And then Skin Ticket just has this really haunted quality, just a creepiness, and they keep it pretty restrained with the sound, but yet it still brings so much power to it. And the track Gently is probably my favorite track in all of Slipknot's entire discography. I should specify the Iowa version of Gently, not the one on Mate, Feed, Kill, Repeat. Gently is just absolutely phenomenal. I never get tired of this track, but honestly, I never get tired of Iowa. This entire album is absolutely amazing. And so for me, no question, Iowa is in A+. I think I'm going to keep Slipknot self-titled in the number 1 position for now, but Iowa is very, very close in second place. Alright, up next is their 2004 album Volume 3, The Subliminal Verses. Now this album is definitely a blend of a lot of different styles. It's very experimental with its sound. It's markedly less aggressive than Iowa as well. They kind of bring in a softer, more muted, like borderline melodic side to their music on this album. The energy is still there, but it's almost muted in a way. And I'll admit, when I first heard this album, I really enjoyed it, but it didn't really sound that cohesive to me. I was on the fence about like it as an album overall, but Volume 3 is definitely one of those Slipknot albums that the more I listen to it, the more I really, really enjoy it. I don't know, it grows on me every time I listen to this record. I love how on the track Vermilion, it's very calming and sort of soothing in a way, but Corey's vocals just have this underlying sense of anxiety to them. It almost puts you on edge, but it is very calming at the same time. I love that dynamic. And again, they kind of stick to like that sort of unsettled feeling on the track The Virus of Life, how they use all that vocal distortion. And my favorite track on this record might actually be the closing one, Danger, Keep Away. There's just something very despondent about its sound, like it's very hopeless sounding, which I weirdly enjoy. I actually really like how they closed this album out with that track. But yeah, Volume 3, I was kind of on the fence about this one between A and B. Initially, I probably would have put it in B, kind of a mixed bag of sounds, but the more I listen to it, like I said, it just continues to grow on me, so I think I'm actually going to put Volume 3 in A. I really enjoy this record. Up next in their discography is their 2008 album All Hope Is Gone. I will be completely honest in saying this is like the one Slipknot record that is very forgettable for me. I don't ever find myself really going back to it all that often. It's almost like they attempted to continue the style that they were going in kind of on Volume 3, but they didn't really add anything new to their sound. There wasn't really anything compelling about this album that made me want to go back for seconds. I also was kind of lacking the emotional impact on this record on their self-titled and Iowa and Volume 3. That was what like really drew me into Slipknot's sound, was just how raw and emotional they were on their delivery. And I didn't really get that on All Hope Is Gone. The one exception I would say is the track Snuff, which is very melodic, very beautiful. That one definitely delivers on that emotional vulnerability, but the record as a whole, I was missing that a lot of the time. I don't think that All Hope Is Gone is a terrible record at all. I do enjoy it. It's just I don't find myself going back to it all that often, and I would say in their discography, for me, it's pretty forgettable, so I think I'm going to be putting All Hope Is Gone in C. Up next is their record .5 The Gray Chapter that they released in 2014. Now this one, they really lean into that kind of creepy, haunted quality to their tone, which I really enjoy. They use a lot of restraint on this album, which really ramps up the tension, and then it just makes those energetic parts of their tracks that much more impactful. I will say, as much as I love the atmosphere and everything on this record, it's a little bit on the long side. I think they could have maybe like polished it up a little bit more, kind of shortened its runtime. There's definitely some tracks that I find myself returning to more than others. One of my favorites is definitely The Devil and I. That one's a great example of what I was saying about how they kind of have this minimalistic approach, but then it builds up so amazingly into the chorus and they just bring that punch of energy. Kill Pop is definitely an interesting one too on this album that stands out just because it sounds a bit different from the rest of the album, but I really enjoy it. And I think my favorite is If Rain Is What You Want, again with just that creepy kind of restrained quality to its sound. It's just a little more slowed down and there's something very atmospheric about it, which I love. So .5, The Gray Chapter. This one's kind of a mixed bag for me. There's elements of it I absolutely adore. The album as a whole, I don't really sit and listen to the whole thing. I kind of go back to certain tracks. So I think I'm gonna put The Gray Chapter in B. I would say it's a pretty solid album. There's some high points, there's some low points. Overall, it's a pretty good record though. Up next is their 2019 album, We Are Not Your Kind. Honestly, I freaking love this album. I absolutely absolutely love it. It's so dark and sinister, and I love the more electronic side to their sound that they leaned into on this one. And it's finally the record in their discography where I feel like they take the playfulness of their self-titled, the rage of Iowa, the experimentation of Volume 3, and that dark, creepy, haunted quality of the Gray Chapter, and they blend them all together in a really cohesive album, and then they add like that kind of electronic touch I was talking about, which is like the new element to their sound. Unsainted is definitely a standout track for me, how it starts with like those creepy bell sounds, a sort of atmospheric quality, and then it just pummels you with the aggression on the chorus. Also, the track My Pain is a huge standout. It's probably no surprise to all of you by now that I'm always drawn to like the really creepy, atmospheric, more restrained songs, and this one is no exception. This is definitely a more slowed down one, but it almost makes your skin crawl in a fantastic way. And Not Long for This World, I love how ambient this one is. The vocals are a little bit more melodic on this one, but there's kind of an echoiness to them that they implement, and again, it just kind of lends a sort of atmospheric quality to the tone of this record. So We Are Not Your Kind, I think it's amazing. I love listening to it. I would put it in A+, but it's just, as much as I love it, it's not quite on the level of Iowa or their self-titled for me. So I'm going to put it at the very, very top of A, but it is very close to being an A+ for me. I just love We Are Not Your Kind. I think it's fantastic. All right, and last up in Slipknot's discography, at least to date, is their 2022 album, The End So Far. Now, this one is really interesting to me. When I first heard it, I really enjoyed it. I loved this album. I thought it was going to quickly become one of my favorite Slipknot records. The production is just fantastic, and again, they kind of lean into a slightly more electronic sounding side. It's kind of a continuation of We Are Not Your Kind in that way, but I can't exactly explain what it is. There's something about this album that's missing for me, and it's almost the replay factor. It's like on first listen, I thought this thing was incredible, like so cohesive, the tracks flowed amazingly, and I just didn't really find myself going back to it for whatever reason. I will say the opening track, Adderall, I do really enjoy. It's a very different sound for Slipknot, pretty melodic and just very unique in their discography. And I also love Yen, very ambient, and again, that dark and haunted tone, they just build that track up really well. But yeah, this album is just hard for me to explain. Production-wise, it's really impeccable. It sounds amazing. I just don't find myself returning to it. It's lacking like a sort of emotional vulnerability or something there for me. So I think The End So Far, I am gonna put in B, like kind of right in the middle, and I'll put it just below the Gray Chapter. So there it is. That is my final ranking of all of Slipknot's studio albums. So in A+, the absolutely perfect records, we have their self-titled album and Iowa. In A, so very close to perfect, we have We Are Not Your Kind and Volume 3. In B, so kind of the middle of the road albums, we have the Gray Chapter and The End So Far. In C, which are kind of the forgettable ones for me, we have All Hope Is Gone. And then in D, my least favorites, we just have Mate, Feed, Kill, Repeat. So yeah, that is my final Slipknot album ranking. Hopefully you all enjoyed this fun little video. Again, this video is just my personal taste and opinion. Definitely let me know in the comments how you would rank Slipknot's albums. I would love to read those. But yeah, as usual, thank you all so much for watching. Stay tuned, and I will see you in the next video.